So yeah, hello. Welcome to my talk about powering non-developers, more specifically editor tools and workflow customizations in Unity. Welcome. Maybe a bit more about me in the beginning. That's my name. Feel free to just call me Ans. I've heard it's a bit of a difficult name to pronounce. I have a couple of years of experience working in the games industry as a Unity developer. Mostly in the last couple of years, editor tooling and technical artist stuff, a bunch of optimization, making specific tools for people. But I also know lots about feature development and just normal like, making games, etc. And I like educating. The last couple of years, I've been holding talks at universities and online events, and even workshops in internal company workshops, etc. So yeah, I think that's enough about me. So let's dive right in. So first of all, why? Why would you? What's with the editor tools? Speed, right? You basically you want to reduce friction at every point, make it faster for people to do their everyday tasks, um, reduce the workflow complexity, just make everything snappy, make everything less complicated. And these things can give a competitive advantage to other teams. If you have a super nice tooled out workflow and all of the everything just runs smoothly and you can make stuff way faster and automatically, it's obviously way more better. And also like for retention, it's a lot more fun working with tools which just work great and are nice to interact with instead of like having to click on 1,000 buttons. No one likes that stuff. So exactly what are we going to do. The first thing you can do for editor toolings is to automate error-prone tasks. What do I mean by that? Error-prone basically means anytime you import an asset and you click like 20 buttons to do the same thing, or anytime you need to link something up in always the same fashion, or anytime you need to um, basically do menial tasks that are not that complicated to do, but introduce, or if you forget about them, introduce errors. The other thing is to just solve everyday problems. Just go to your game designers and artists and creatives and maybe even developers and like look over their shoulder for half a day and see what kind of problems they're facing, what kind of things they're spending their time on. One guy I was working with, um, he just spent hours and hours importing stuff from Figma and exporting screenshots or something like that. So, for game designers, for artists, or for developers, each one of them has very different problems and very different worries. For artists, usually it's more like import export stuff, or maybe they want to have some cool tool to automate material setup, etc. For game designers, it's like a cool level editor, or maybe some way to change the data for a bunch of levels at the same time, or just making screenshots or something like that. Um, and the other major thing is to improve the way information and data is being communicated to the people working inside of the engine. So we're talking about level data, we're talking about materials, we're talking about import settings, we're talking about just random data for or like stats, etc. A while back, people just used to do everything in Excel, and like there's a bunch of really cool tools there. But nowadays, you can do quite a lot of things inside of Unity itself. And along with that, improve the interactions with that same data, make it easier for people to massively change things, be flexible, make really interesting decisions even later on into the development, stuff like that. And for each one of them, you can just you should just communicate with all of the stakeholders, with people who are involved, and ask them, "Hey, what do you need? How can I improve your day-to-day experience? How can I save some time?" Right? So, what's in it for you? Why should I go through all this trouble? Um, become the 10x developer. I personally, I don't like really believe in becoming the 10x developer. Like you can't write code 10 times faster and solve problems 10 times faster. But what you can do is like make the life of 10 developers a bit easier and like improve the speed of everyone's workflow and like save hours and hours of time. Um, the other thing is career opportunities, right? If you are like really good at making tools, like most companies need people who can write tools, and most major companies already have a dedicated tools team, and they are always looking for people who are really good at their stuff. And also, it's very hard to fire if you're vital. Um, we've seen some layoffs the last couple of months, and a bunch of people getting laid off, sometimes like 10%, 20%. And if you're like maintaining something that's improving the productivity of entire departments or bigger teams, it's hopefully a bit harder to like get fired. But like none of this is a guarantee. Um, yeah. So what about this presentation? There's basically two ways to go about this, right? So breadth first, cover lots of topics, kind of go not in depth into that many things, or just to go depth first on one specific thing and just cover all of that. So I want to approach it in a way to basically give you a broad overview, and then gives you some neat goodies and like some inspiration on what you can do and how you can make your own tools really good. So we'll go over all of the approaches. There's like way too many to count. Get a sense for what's possible. I will show you some neat tips and tricks, so you know where to look for if you're trying to go in depth on it yourself. Unity documentation is luckily really good for some parts. For some other parts, it's like a bit more complicated. So just knowing what's possible is already a good start. And I show you some fun examples, right? So um, just some of the tools I've worked at, some kind of editor tips and tricks, and like just interesting workflow examples, so you're inspired for what you can do yourself. Yeah, and some neat tips and tricks. So let's get technical. Um, right. So how do you draw UI? That's the most important question. How can you make stuff appear on the screen? There's basically two approaches. The first one is IMGUI. It's a bit older, and most of the tools you see on the assets are still using it. And then Visual Elements. Unity has been pushing towards this a lot the last couple of years. IMGUI basically works by calling a bunch of functions and constructing UI hierarchies just by writing C# code. So everything is just one file per one editor, and you write all of the UI hierarchies inside of C#. That makes it really easy to call, like to hook into callbacks or to work with asset database, because everything is, just 100% in C#, and you have all of your code base and you have all of your libraries, etc. on hand. And like, this is my personal opinion, but it's really easy to just bash a bunch of stuff together. If someone tells you, hey, can I have like a quick tool? You just work on it half an hour. You got something good and can like communicate with a person, hey, is this what you want? And it's really easy to just make a quick prototype, in my personal opinion. And the nice thing is that IMGUI can be contained inside of visual elements, but containing visual elements inside of IMGUI, that's a bit harder. And I personally haven't found a way to do that yet. But if you have ideas on how to do it, like, feel free to send a message. So yeah, visual elements is a whole different concept. It uses UXML, basically just a Unity version of XML, and USS, like Unity CSS. So lots more web technology inspired workflow. And it's also using an entirely different architecture, like MVC, model, view, component, very no, not component. What's it called? I forgot what the C is called, stand for. But basically, the styling, the visual hierarchy, and the code is also very separated. So that also means that you have three different, or usually 2 or 3 different files per editor window, or per property drawer, or something like that, which bloats the amounts of data, like code and files you have in your project. But the good thing is that the editor performance is like way better, and most of the tools Unity has been developing it themselves. have been built by visual elements. So, for example, the package manager or some of the other newer stuff. And like it's also a bit more complicated. Not complicated in the sense that it's like harder to learn or like harder to wrap your head around, but there's just more code. So if you go into a code base, it's harder to read, harder to understand what you're doing, and it's also like more spread out. So like if you just want to have like a small window with a couple of buttons, it maybe doesn't make sense to go for visual elements, but because the amount of code you will be writing and the amount of stuff you will have in your project is like way bloated, just write a couple of lines of IMGUI and be done with your day, right? But for a bigger project where you are going to build lots of complicated visual hierarchies, lots of connected things, feel free to use visual elements. It's probably like way better in terms of like maintainability and architecture. So yeah, talking about IMGUI, like there's 4 ways to draw things. The first 2 are very similar, basically GUI and editor GUI, right? If you don't find a function in one, just try looking for it in the other. Like it's very similar. The way you work with those is you create rects, basically a rectangle with a position and a width and a height, and draw UI into them. So this means you have to do lots of math, but you can also achieve pixel perfect accuracy. Like if you want to move a button to the side by 15 pixels, just move it by 15 pixels. But if you want to make a very nice layout, you will need to do probably lots of math. So that also like bloats the amount of code, like the all of the math stuff can get in the way and kind of make it harder to understand what you're actually programming. And if you have a bunch of like minus 15 or minus 20 or divided by 2, etc., and you're later on, maybe a year or half a year later, trying to change the way the layout works or something like that, it will be very hard to kind of see what you were trying to do with all these little math things. So try to maybe add a comment or something to explain what you're doing when you're moving stuff around or something. But for property drawers or something like that, it's really great because these are like for just a 20 pixel height and maybe 80 or 100 pixel wide things. It's really nice to just be able to tweak everything to perfection. And yeah. The other approach is using GUI layout and editor GUI layout, basically the same functions, except there's like a layout suffix at the end. And when you will work with these, you will see that in, maybe let me just go into like this inspector. You will see that there's a GUI layout dot text field, right? So you have the same function here, and you have the GUI dot. You say basically there's like an overlap in many of these. If you want to use the layout version, feel free. If you want to use the GUI version, feel free to do that as well. So there's like a bit of mirroring for both of these functions. The layout functions give you an automatic layout of the UI. So this means basically you just call what you want to call, and it figures out how to draw it based on what you're doing. The way this works is from top to bottom. So if you have something that's called first, it will draw at the top. And if you have something called second, it will draw right below that. And if you are using scopes, 1 second, let me get not this one. Yeah, for example, here we have an horizontal scope. This basically switches the way it's drawing from top to bottom to left to right. So these two, this one will appear left, and this one appear right. As you can see, if I select one of here, this is the text field, and this is the Boolean value, right? So, and yeah, just use these scopes to make hierarchies. You can also nest them. Basically, it's using a disposable pattern, and once the bracket here closes, it will call the end horizontal, and once you start it, it will call begin horizontal. And you can nest them and use also the space editor layout.space or something like that to add a couple of pixels of space between properties or something like that, for like a bit more fine-grained position. But anything like a bit more complex, feel free to use the classic versions of these. And it's also a bit easier to understand, right? You're more writing your intent and less writing math and doing rect calculations, etc. And it's if you want to have a text field, it's going to be just text field, etc., etc. So yeah. The next thing is editor styles, right? Look at changes style. Cool, cool, cool. You can define the look of UI elements by changing or like applying a style in the last overload of the method. Usually you can just choose a style and then modify it, maybe add a bit of padding or add the maybe add a bit of change the color or something like that. And there's basically two places you can get a style from. The first one is GUI.skin and the second one is editor styles. So using GUI.skin, you can see there's like a skin for labels, for boxes, for buttons, for toggle or windows, etc. And if you do box, sorry, editor styles. And for editor styles, you have like stuff like labels or foldouts or pop-ups. These usually have also icons included in them and specific ways of rendering. So if you want to have custom skins or something like that, just look in these two places. Or the last one is GUI style.none, and like that's the like default style. And the way you can modify these is by just doing new GUI style and then applying a default one. And then you can have a couple of overrides here. For example, the alignment can be like alignment text anchor dot lower center or something like that if you want to place text in these. So yeah, that's basically how you can modify GUI styles. And a good practice is also to cache these, so you don't create new styles every frame or something like that. So yeah. And the next thing I want to touch on for drawing is using icons. You can just do the same thing as usual, do resources.load or something like that. But like this would work for like custom logos or something like that. But one thing I would like to draw your attention to is using this editor GUI utility.icon content. With this function, you can get a lot of default Unity icons, which Unity is already using. For example, if you look up here, you have these like gears and pause and play and like camera icons and folder icons and script icons and like basically any icon you see inside of Unity has an ID, and if you provide that ID into this icon content thing, it will basically automatically provide you the content for that. And there's a really nice GitHub repository called Unity Editor Icons from this guy. Feel free to check it out. It's really neat because it basically has all of the IDs and then a version of the icon that's next to it. So if you want to look for something, just go there, browse through. Maybe you need an Android symbol or something like that. They have it's all inside of Unity and already loaded into memory, so there's no need to worry about any of that stuff. So yeah, we know how to draw stuff inside of the UI, but how do we use any of this, right? Where do you even draw stuff? So the first thing I wanted to like showcase was making custom inspectors. This is probably what you will be doing quite a lot of. Basically, you have a class which derives from editor, and you just add the property custom editor and provide the component that this will draw for. It doesn't have to be just a mono behavior, but it can also be a material or a scriptable object, right? So inside of this, there's basically just one method that's really important, which is called onInspectorGUI, and there's also a different separate one for the visual element workflow, but I won't be going too much into that. So if we go into the custom inspector class right here, we basically tell it to draw the default inspector, which obviously draws the default inspector. And then we tell it to use with the GUI layout, basically automatically laying out and telling it to draw a label with this text right here. So if we select it, it will draw the default inspector, and down here it will say, hey, I'm a custom editor, And if we change anything right here, for example, erasing something, it basically updates on recompilation and everything just works. You can add anything you want in here for editor GUI layout dot toggle or text fields or foldouts or maybe pop-ups or different sliders, or basically lots of different things if you want to have like color selectors, etc. Or if you like, the main thing that most people also do is just to disable drawing the default inspector and then constructing all of it themselves, if to maybe optimize the layout or maybe hide a couple of things right here and there. So especially for like shaders, you will have so many unnecessary properties here and there. Maybe some of them need to be updated automatically or something like that. But yeah, that's how you would work with custom inspectors. Yeah, they overwrite the default inspector, so that means there is one class. Ideally, you would place these classes inside of an editor folder, so these will be placed in a separate assembly and also in a separate, basically removed on the compilation, and you have one script per one component, right? So if I go into my component, this is just the component, and then there's one script. It's for monobehavior, scriptable objects, and shaders. And if you want to switch like the render, you would need to do that inside of the inspector class itself. If you want to change any of the properties, obviously, if they're public, you can just set them, but I would really recommend to use the serialized object and serialized properties to update the values. What this means is that inside of Unity, all of the data is stored as basically files, right? So if you change the serialized object and then in the end you call, okay, set dirty, this will tell Unity, okay, this is, it will also tell it to include it in the undo and redo history, and it will also like save it properly, so you can interact with serialized fields or like private properties, etc. Anything that Unity itself saves, you will be able to interact with. And the other thing is that you should keep multi-object editing in mind. So, for example, this editor right here with this custom inspector here, it does not have multi-editor support. So if I select multiple versions of the same thing, right here it says, hey, and if I select multiple versions, it will instead draw the default inspector. I would need to add a couple either here. And that's for child classes. I think it's called like multi, can edit multiple objects, right? And if I apply that attribute, it should, it should use the hey thing here. But there's a couple of things you should keep in mind. There's inside of the Unity scripting documentation, there's a page where it says, hey, keep these things in mind. Just look all of the information up there on what to be careful about. So yeah, the next thing, property drawers. It doesn't have anything to do with like the furniture drawers, but it's like drawing properties, right? So basically, very similar syntax. You just define the class derived from property drawer and add the custom property drawer attribute and specify the class you want to reference here. The thing you can notice with property drawers is that custom class drawer, is that inside of the drawing function on GUI, it will provide direct like the position and the width of the property that's going to be drawn, as well as the serialized property for the one you will be drawing as, and the label. So this you can obviously try using editor GUI layout inside of properties, but if you want to use the rect workflow, it will be way easier to do all of that stuff and move things around. And the other thing is to use the get property height. If you want to change the height of the property, like usually it's just a single line, maybe 20 pixels or something like that. But if you want to change the height of the property, you should add that here, maybe add 10 pixels or maybe add 50 pixels. and then you can draw more stuff down below or something like that. So yeah, that's basically how that works. Oh yeah, I should probably draw the default inspector again. So these property drawers are for serializable classes. Obviously, you should add the attribute that it's serializable here. And then anytime this class is being implemented inside of a mono-behavior or scriptable object, it will use the customized property drawer for that specific class. And as you can see, it's using the my custom class here, and it has a bunch of like maybe 50 pixels extra space up here because we specified it. So one thing I would like to like draw your attention to is that inside of here, even though I'm telling it to use a text field or to use a toggle, none of the stuff I will be writing here, like I can write, but as soon as I enter, it will be deleted. So none of the serialized properties or the serialized fields are being changed. So if I want to do this property, I can properly, I can do like the text is property dot string value, and then the text field will return return a text basically, like a string basically. And then I can do property dot string value equals, and at the end just do property dot it's called like save modified values or something like that. I actually forgot what it's called, but you can just check it in the Unity documentation. Oh my god, why? But yeah, basically that if you like tell it to dirty the property, all of the stuff you write in here will actually be saved to the property itself. Yeah. Yeah, just overwrites the specific drawing field inside of the inspector. And this is also global. Like once you add one property drawer for one specific class, anytime this will be implemented, every single instance of that class will be drawn with it in the specific way. And there's, as far as I know, no real way to disable it for just a couple of classes or something like that. And it's for any field that's serialized. So if you have fields that are not serialized, it won't really show them, obviously, you know. The next thing, this is, the juicy stuff, custom windows. For this, the setup is a bit different and a bit easier as well. You just declare a class and derive from editor window. These are basically scriptable objects, or they derive from scriptable objects, so they can be created and destroyed. And also, as far as I know, there can be multiple instances of the same window or something like that. And to call the window, you just add a menu item with a function, or if you have a specific, or if like a different way of opening the window, maybe inside of a button or something like that, you would call it that way. But for now, I will use that. So test and then my custom window. I click on it, and here is my custom window with the window title. I can drag and drop it like any other Unity window, and it says, hey, custom window. And if I want, I can add anything else inside of here as well. GUI layout dot, maybe let's add a slider or something like that. And basically we will have a slider inside of the window, but as you can see, we are not able to change it because there's no value to update it. Basically what you input here is what will show up inside of here. So you will need to do your own state management and your own value saving, etc. And also checking what changed. So yeah, this is basically the place where you can make your really complex editors. You can make complex layouts, and your maybe drag information and data from multiple different components and multiple different places. And it just works like any other normal default Unity window. Yeah, I will also show a couple of examples later on, but that's basically it. So yeah, the next thing is property attributes. This is something I'm not even sure many people know about, but you can make property drawers for custom attributes. So the way to do this is you just define a custom attribute. Be careful that you don't derive from the system.attribute, but the Unity specific property attribute. This basically makes it so that Unity knows that you have this attribute on a value, right? Tell it where the attribute can be placed. This will work for methods and for fields. For entire classes, I'm not 100% sure, but you can try. And the rest of the workflow is pretty similar. You can have multiple values, strings, enums, etc. And then inside of the attribute drawer, this one, for example, I made it so that inside of my custom class, my component, I have a just normal float, and I add this attribute to that float parameter, and the limit is 10, right? So inside of my custom attribute drawer, I will basically get the attribute, cast it to my specific version of that attribute, get the limit, and compare it to the float value of that property. If this is not a float value, if this is, for example, a string value or a Boolean or something like that, you will get errors. So this is just a very simple implementation of this. So if it is bigger, I will draw it in red. And if it's smaller, I will draw it as usual. So as you can see, right now it's bigger than 10. And if I hover over it, it will also show me a tooltip. And if I reduce it, it will just draw it as usual. So you can have like really nice customization here. You can also like disable specific fields. You can automatically draw information from different places. You can replace entire fields, etc. And there's a really nice plugin called Naughty Attributes, which automatically gives you a bunch of these attributes for free, and you can have them, for example, on mono behaviors, make them automatically reference different scripts or something like that. A bunch of optimization stuff that's really nice. Or Odin Inspector as well. They have a bunch of stuff that's really similar to this, but obviously that's a paid asset, so feel free. Yeah, so that's it basically, right? Really cool. No, there's more. So there's a couple of really exciting things you can do. Like most of the things I talked about earlier are basically the standard way. Most of that is really documented and really played out. And also, like, you can get quite far with all of the stuff I've told you until now. But there's a couple of other things I wanted to mention, mainly calling into editor events, which are already public inside of Unity. There's a couple of places you can hook into. For example, one thing I wanted to show was hooking into the project window. So I have this class called event hook, and inside of the editor application class, there's a bunch of events you can hook into. One of them, for example, is the project window or the hierarchy. So editor application.hierarchy, like if I uncomment this, it will call this function anytime any hierarchy window item is being drawn. So for example, what I'm doing here is drawing a red box over the hierarchy item. So if I go into Unity and it recompiles, let's wait. Yeah, basically you can see there's a red box on top of it. And because I know what the item it's drawing is, I can, for example, add extra information about the item that's being drawn. For example, the amount of components it has, or if it has any references, or the position, or basically anything you would want to do. Or maybe if I want to add extra buttons on here, that would also be possible. And I actually have a tool I made myself, and it's basically using the same approach, but it's like a bit more complex. Anytime you select something, this like pop-up appears, and you can get like asset information or the file size, or maybe even the GUID here. So if you have like folders or something like that, and you want to get the GUID for the folder, just click on it and it will copy it to the clipboard. or if you want to go into something and get it will show you what kind of asset it is, or if you're currently just looking for scriptable. One second, maybe we will search for materials. Oh no, materials. I don't have any. Or like scripts, for example. And if I want to check what folder it's from, I can maybe share the path. So if I just scroll through here, I can see which path each item is from. So that's really a neat application of this, for example. So yeah, feel free to look around inside of the Unity editor, see if you can find interesting places to hook into, and just mess around with it, right? And for example, right here, I have also an integration that it will automatically open it inside of the Finder, right? And another thing I wanted to show is, for example, maybe you may have noticed these buttons up here. They are also hooking into something. It's like the top bar thing. And if I click on here, it will automatically give me my screenshot tool. This is also a good example of what a custom editor looks like. I can have multiple tabs at the top. Maybe I want to be in single screenshot mode, specify the resolution here, and like open the screenshots folder or something like that immediately, or anytime I take a screenshot, automatically copy it to the clipboard. Basically, this was done for like people if they need to make a bunch of screenshots. I can just press this button. It goes through all of the sizes, and I can go into the folder and automatically see all of the screenshots that were made for with this tool. Or if I want to open quickly the build settings or the preferences or the project settings, right? And this, for example, is a button that resets user data. Just a bunch of stuff that's really interesting and useful. Otherwise, you would, need to go here and I don't even know where it is, like build settings or something. And I don't even know if there's a button to reset the user data by default. And the thing you can do is even modify these things based on different editor states. For example, this in play mode, I have these extra buttons, so it would automatically pause and call the profiler. And that's really useful because otherwise you would need to do that as two actions and find the window, etc. And these are things you would do like hundreds of times in a day, right? So just finding these places and hooking into them and just improve the productivity a bit. That's really useful. Yeah. And there's also a really different approach. I'm not even sure if it's conforming to the EULA or something like that, but you can hack into the Unity editor with reflection. So let me just go into here and close a bunch of these windows. That's something where Rider really shines. You can just go into here and go into assemblies. And then inside of the Unity editor.core module, you will have, just check this out, you will have so many different places where there's different classes, etc. Like these are entire namespaces, and each one of them has so many different classes. So let's just look for package manager, right? The package manager has, for example, the oh yeah, I probably need to look in UI. Right, there's this class called package manager window, and if I double click on it, it will automatically decompile everything inside of Rider, and it will show me basically what the source code for Unity would have looked like. These are all DLL and DLLs inside of Unity that exist, but it's kind of hidden. So inside of the package manager, there's actually something called mroot, and if you go into here, you will where is it? Oh yeah, this is basically the root visual element of the package manager window right here, visual element. And the thing you can do is get this root visual element with reflection. So I prepared a little example here with the reflection stuff. Basically, we want to get the editor assembly. This is just the assembly I just showed you right now by getting the assembly called editor.core module. And maybe there's more efficient ways to do this. And then get the type of this specific class. So Unity editor.packageManager.ui.packageManager window. It's important to, include the namespace into that as well, because that's just how it is looking for these things. Basically, every time you want to, it's checking if it already has a reference to the window, and if it doesn't, it will basically do this. It's hooked into onUpdate, but this will only call until the current window is replaced. So this will all of the stuff inside here will just execute once, ideally, or anytime the stuff recompiles, etc. It will just call this as whenever it's lost its reference to the current editor window, or if maybe there doesn't even exist one. So sometimes it will only do it after the editor window has been created. So you find the package manager window. That's really easy to do because all of these windows are scriptable objects that exist inside the stuff. So if you just go into here, editor window, it actually derives from scriptable objects. So you can use the find object method, and obviously return if it doesn't exist. And then inside of the current window, you want to get this m root thing right here. Then you have a reference to that visual element. You want to cast it to the visual element, and obviously if it doesn't exist, return. But after that, you just want to register this callback. The reflection stuff is really expensive, but when you register this callback, you just add this once, and after that, it's basically injected into there, and will use the normal rendering just like normally. This is a function I made myself. You just root element, the element name. So there's toolbar spacer, right? That's basically what this specific thing is called. If you want, you can. I actually forgot debug visual element. For example, let's just go into Unity, and this function debug visual element is just a helper function that just goes through the entire element and displays the names of each one of these. So, for example, here you have the top package manager, the top menu bar, that's the stuff up here. Inside of that, you have the add menu, that's this button right here. Then the filter tabs menu, this one, for example, the ordering menu, stuff like that. So you can just go through each one of these and see what they correspond to inside of the UI. And you can see that there's an element called toolbar spacer, and we want to find that element and register on basically our own UI into that. So basically, if you want, you can just copy all of it, and it will basically add an extra visual element into it, and inside of the element we will call this callback, and this callback just on package manager window on toolbar. Yeah, exactly. We are just having a button, and we can, like as I mentioned before, we can include IMGUI stuff inside of visual elements. So we are actually using GUI layout stuff here, and we can call stuff. So this button before didn't even exist. If I remove this, right, this button does not even exist, right? Bam, it's empty. But if I add it again, it's completely editable. It completely works inside of the Unity UI. I can click it, and it says, "Wow, you're a hacker! Super cool." So that's. I really want to invite you to just place buttons wherever you want inside of the entire Unity UI. You are free to do whatever you want, and usually it works really, really surprisingly well. And the more you can add buttons in different places and automate stuff and just make the tool your own and like talk with people, ask them questions, how you can support them, etc., the better it will be. So yeah, I think yeah, that's the basic workflow. Explore assemblies, find the internal hidden callbacks or the visual elements, and then just inject your own stuff into those. I think that's it for my presentation now. I just wanted to show you a couple of other cool things. For example, one project I have been working on is called, oh, I think it's broken now. Oh, no, it's not. It's just loading. One project I have been working on is called Open Store, and it basically a Unity asset store inside of the editor. And you can like sort with popularity or like display different results. It will like render stuff in here. And I think there is a problem right now because my screen is scaled up for this resolution. Yeah, but a bunch of other things, for example, you can have, if you have missing project references or something like that, you can add a thing right here, click on the button and it will scan through the entire project for missing references. Or you can have like a tool that searches for textures that are non-power of two, or you can, if you have the GUID for something, you can just type in here and it will automatically select it. Or there's a bunch of stuff you can just do, like utility stuff that you do every day in Unity. So yeah, feel free to like build assets and make stuff that's really cool, make stuff that just is easy and fun to interact with. Yeah, I think that's it for my talk. Thanks.